Good evening, everybody.
Yes, she's gonna.
So it's 5:30, time to start our meeting. And I see that we have the quorum, except for trustee Bailey, who is not a member of the committee, but is here in person. The rest are all online. So we have quorum to start our meeting. And I will now call the meeting to order. So we can start with our land acknowledgement, which is going to be electronically played.
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty lands of the Michizagig Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich pre-contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe-Hongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all people.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land
and continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to the original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the lands, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Trustee Pramodi, can I ask you to move the agenda? Trustee Cameron, can you second it?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the agenda? I see none. All in favor? Carried. Number 4 is declaration of conflict of interest. Does anyone have any conflict of interest?
I do not.
Seeing none, we can move on to the next item, which is the approval of minutes. 5.1 is minutes of the Curriculum Equity and Student Wellbeing Committee meeting, which was held on 8 May 2023. I request Trustee Cameron to move the minutes of this committee meeting.
Yes, I will.
And Trustee Clark, will you please second it?
I second it.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes have been approved. Number 6 on the agenda is delegations. We have 3 delegations today, and I think they're all online. Okay. So we have Thomas Ella. Okay. So we have 6.1 is Thomas Ella, resident, regarding the PDSB's library audit. Before we start with the delegations, I would just like to remind the delegations that you have 10 minutes to make your presentation. And after the delegation, the trustees are allowed to ask a few questions. So Mr. Ellard, your time starts now.
Thank you. I'm representing Libraries Not Landfills this evening, and I'd like to begin with the statement that no society that destroys books has ever ended up on the right side of history. Next slide, please. This evening, I'm going to give you a rough outline of who we are, what are our concerns, what it is we think we know, what we've seen in the documentation, what might be gone, what's the outcome, where are we now, and a clear statement of what we're asking for this evening. Next slide, please. So I'm Tom Ellard. I'm a parent here with my son in the PDSB. I'm a product of the public education system. I believe that our community's children deserve the best education available for the tax dollars that we have. I'm upset that our library resources have gone to landfills or been shredded, hurting the environment, and more importantly to me, my child's chances at receiving the best public education. Next slide, please. Who are libraries, not landfills? Well, we're a concerned group of parents, grandparents, and educators who fund the Peel Public School Board. I'll emphasize that again, the Public School Board. We were formed after PDSB teaching staff approached us to help raise public awareness about their concerns regarding the weeding and auditing process. We have an active steering committee comprised of parents, a principal, a superintendent, teachers, librarians, and other professionals within our community. We agree that new, diverse voices must be added to our library learning commons as well. Next slide, please. What's our view of school libraries? School libraries are fundamental in upholding our freedom of speech, allowing children to access a multitude of ideas in a democracy. A secular, non-ideologically focused library should support the curriculum, and we feel it's vital to enabling critical thinking and a diversity of thought that can only come from an array of ideas. This is a public system funded by the citizens of Peel to serve our children. It should not be the other way around, that we are servicing the needs of a special interest. Elected trustees monitor and direct the board administration on the use of resources on behalf of the community. Fundamentally, I think Canadians do not align themselves with regimes that ban books. Next slide, please. What are our concerns? PDSB is throwing out potentially millions of dollars worth of library books. There's no accountability for this process or for the impact that it has on us as taxpayers. There's been no communication or engagement or transparency. We have empty shelves, which is actually harmful to our children and disadvantages them. This process is highly subjective, arbitrary, and has been inconsistently implemented. The ideological and opaque nature of this weeding process is highly concerning and sets a dangerous precedent not only in Peel, but across Canada. Next slide, please. So what do we know? So there's a picture. We have empty shelves as a result of this initiative in the PDSB. Before May 8th, we know that books were sent to landfills. After May 24th, based on the trustee directive, books should have been placed in storage, but we also know that books continue to be shredded as well. Librarians have lists of the books that were removed, and trustees are on record having heard from their own constituents about their concern around thousands of books being removed. Next slide, please. We also know that there's no consistency in the removal of the materials. However, when the exercise has been executed, the overall result is that the library collections have been substantially reduced. This is not a small initiative. Financial resources, time of board administrators, teachers, custodians have all been dedicated to this weeding and auditing effort. As mentioned before, parents and students were not consulted, and your chair, Dr. Green, agrees that this process was rolled out wrong, as quoted on the CBC. Next slide, please. So here's the result. Those are books in Peel garbage bags heading to landfill because it took place before May 8th. How does this help our students or the environment? Next slide, please. So what did the instructions in the documents that were revealed to us and to your committee last May tell us? Well, the instructions in the report direct librarians to weed their collections of materials starting before 2008. Librarians should only retain materials that reflect the students' lived experiences to reduce the perceived ideological harm. The documents state that the equitable curations process is one where the Peel library staff will be held accountable. So if a book is retained, the librarian needs to justify that retention or be in potential violation of board policies. This approach was further reinforced during your May 8th board meeting. Next slide, please. So weeding, what could be gone? So we know of one school that removed approximately 2,500 books. If we aggregate that number across all of the Peel schools that exist, 259, that represents around 650,000 potential books if they all exercised this initiative the same way. If we took $12 a book based on your replenishment funds, that represents $30,000 a school or $7.8 million worth of books going to landfills. Or if we took $25 as an average cost for a hardcover book on a per school basis, that's $63,000 or $16.2 million worth of value lost in inventory. Next slide, please. So what does that really mean? Well, the reconstitution rate or the seeding rate that's been talked about, $12 per student times 153,000 students equals $1.8 million per year. So if we've already removed $7.8 million, it'll take 4.3 years to reseed the libraries to their current level, or at a higher level of $25 a book. I don't know when the last time was anybody purchased a book. They're pretty expensive. It could be 9 years. Furthermore, we don't know what the reseeding process looks like, who approves these new books, and on what basis. There's no transparency or engagement with the community on that level. I also suspect that the board has access to discount rates. We don't know what they are, but I haven't seen an approved budget for this. Next slide, please. So what's the outcome? Based on those estimates and looking at those empty shelves, we know that a high school student will graduate before these shelves are repopulated. Next slide, please. Here's a photograph that'll give you an idea of just where things are going. A teacher rescued these books out of a dumpster at a PDSB school. This is not a country overseas where we're banning literature. This is right here in our own backyards. This is not what we should be doing in PDSB. Next slide, please. Empty shelves are not inclusive. Empty shelves do not make an equitable learning environment. Empty shelves do not provide a diversity of ideas. And PDSB students with empty shelves today in their schools are at a disadvantage relative to their peers within Peel and the rest of Canada. Next slide, please. So where are we now? We have a statement from the Minister of Education. I'll read it for this group so that everyone's clear. Ontario is committed to ensuring that the addition of new books better reflects the rich diversity of our communities. It is offensive, illogical, counterintuitive to remove books from years past that educate students on Canada's history, anti-Semitism, or celebrated literary classics. I have written to the board immediately to end this practice. That was September 13th. Next slide, please.
Sir, you have past 10 minutes. I hope this is your last slide.
Let's go to my final slide then, please. Next slide. There's one more. So what am I asking for? Please comply with the minister's direction to stop this process. Make the list public of all of the materials that have been weeded. Restore the books now that are in good condition to library shelves. Work with the minister to set a new direction. I'm confident that all of you trustees got into this to make a positive impact on our community and not landfill books. Pass a motion tonight, clearly stating that you are ending this weeding and auditing process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Allard. Now it's time for our trustees to ask questions. Are there any questions?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, is that Trustee Cameron?
Trustee Alves.
Okay, Trustee Alves, it's your, please go ahead.
Thank you through you, Chair. Mr. Allard, thank you so much for delegating tonight. I wanted to ask, by chance, have you been following along for the last few months when it comes to our book reading process? I'm just wondering, just trying to gauge where you might be in the process here. Is there any chance that you might have caught in the student equity, excuse me, the student curriculum and wellness committee from May?
Are you talking about the live meeting? So I watched the meeting online and I've read your minutes for May 8th and May 24th.
Yep, thank you. So at May 8th, I wrote the motion and it failed the first time, but it was later passed. So before the minister had been involved, we've actually already voted to stop this process. It almost had wished that the minister had been tuning in December when we were asking questions about, you know, our shared concern amongst all of us with how this process was taking place, given that this is a directive. Actually, I'll quote Directive 18, Comprehensive Diversity Audit of Schools, mandated by Minister Lecce in pursuant to Directive 10, also mandated by the minister. So I share the same grave concerns that you've articulated today, and many of my colleagues and I have articulated those concerns through the proverbial flagpole. And I know that staff are working diligently to address these concerns. We have passed a motion for staff to stop, and we were given assurances that they would be halting the process. And that's kind of where I am there. But yeah, we called for this long before the minister did, because we do have concerns with how the training is being doled out to staff. You made great points. I understand that the training for this process is also potentially subjective, and have shared those concerns with staff repeatedly. But I just want to thank you again for coming to delegate. And if you have a chance to go back and watch the curriculum equity and student wellbeing committees from the, you know, there are a couple in December, an open session December 22nd, And then the May 8th one, I'd encourage you to take a look at that line of questioning, and I think you'll find that many of us have shared and articulated these concerns. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Alves. One quick comment. I would agree with you on the statement that you have been making.
Mr. Allard, you're not supposed to be answering. We are only here to listen to your delegation, and our trustees, can ask some questions. So, is there any other trustee who would like to ask a question?
Point of order, are you asking me questions, or are you trustees asking?
No. They would ask questions regarding your delegation questions of clarification. See none, thank you, Mr. Allard.
I have a question, Chair.
Okay. Trustee Cameron, please go ahead.
So I wonder if through you, Chair, we could get clarification of a statement just made by Trustee Alves. He would have indicated that we, as a Board of Trustees, have voted to have administration stop the weeding and landfill process. My understanding through you, Chair, is that they have put this on pause. I might just be tinkering with semantics, but one is stop, one is pause. Can you help us clarify, Chair, through administration, which is it that they are doing, administration is doing?
Thank you, Trustee Cameron. I may ask AD Logan, or yes, our counsel, Ms. Lockyer, will be able to answer that question.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Trustee Alves' questions and comments were actually not clarifying questions of the delegate. So I would suggest that answering that question would require a debate or discussion, and that's not what we're here to do right now. So I apologize. We are here to hear the delegation, and we are here to ask clarifying questions of the delegate only, not to enter into any debate or discussion regarding the topic itself. If there's a request after any delegations, as trustees know, there are options that you can make a motion to either receive the report, refer it to the director, ask for a report to come back, or refer the delegate to a different committee. So after hearing the delegation, that is open to the trustees to make a motion for any one of those four options. And I'll leave that with you as trustees to determine what motion you want to bring forward to deal with the delegation. Thank you.
So trustees, what would you like to do? Would you receive this for action or information? Sorry? Yeah, Trustee Promoli, your hand is up. You have to say something.
Thank you, Chair Benjamin.
Go ahead.
What I would like us to do at this point is to request a report for the current status on the situation with the libraries in regards to where we are in the process and what has been done in terms of documenting the books. And so that I think it is appropriate at this point, since that has been moved for and requested, a report back to help us better understand what the full situation is within our libraries at this point.
Thank you, Trustee Promoli. Any more questions from our trustees?
Sorry, yes, I also have my hand up. I just wanted to say that I would second that from Trustee Promoli, but also ask that that report be given in response to Mr. Eller. I believe one of the options, and Trustee Promoli, I'm not sure if you're alluding to that being your request, but in that report coming, I would hope that we could ask the director to please respond to this delegation with what comes in that report.
Thank you, Trustee Alves. I think we will do this. We will request Trustee Promoli to put motion to receive this for information from our committee.
Could I add to that?
And Trustee Promoli, are you putting a motion on the floor?
Yes, I might need some help with the wording from Catherine. But I know that Stan would also, Trustee Cameron would like to add to it. So I'd be curious to know before we go ahead with the motion to know how he would like to add to it.
Okay,
Is that through you, Chair? Is that all right?
Trustee Cameron, please go ahead.
So I like the motion by Trustee Promoli and the addition by Trustee Alves. The only thing that was missing there, I think, was one of the four options that Council Lockyer had shared with us as to who we can redirect this to. Could we add to Trustee Promoli's motion that this should be referred with the appropriate questions we've already heard to the director, as opposed to someone on the committee? I believe that this should reach the highest order of our organization.
Thank you, Trustee Cameron. Yes, Ms. Lockyer, what are we supposed to be doing now?
Thank you very much, and through you, Madam Chair. Just for clarity purposes, is the motion actually for a report back with the answer to all of those questions, including contacting back the delegate, or is the request to actually refer this to the director to address the questions? It's two different options, and Trustee Promoli was requesting a report back from staff on the issue, on the status of the books and the motion, the previous motion, together with the questions that were asked this evening. And Trustee Cameron, your amendment was actually an additional option to refer this to the director instead. Just seeking clarification.
Trustee Cameron, are you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
I believe council has clarified the two different options presented. Because Trustee Promoli was the mover, I'm happy to defer to her. Although my suggestion was this needs to go to the director for a report back to the committee. I leave that with Trustee Promoli to determine.
Thank you, Trustee Cameron. Trustee Promoli, now it's up to you to frame the motion and put it on the floor.
I suppose if we want to ensure that we're getting information that's going to best reflect what's actually happening in the libraries right now, I agree with Trustee Cameron that we want to ensure that we have the director's eyes on this, and I do trust that the director is paying very close attention to this situation because it is affecting our schools in quite a large way. But I think having a report back to the committee, I suppose coming from the team would make the most sense so that we can get that direct information. But I do understand Trustee Cameron's request for response from the director also. So is it possible, Catherine, to have a report come back and then also have a response from the director to Mr. Ellard?
Yes, Ms. Lockyer, please go ahead.
Thank you for the question, through you, Madam Chair. The recommendation that you're making here will actually go to the board for approval, and the board will approve or not the recommendation that you're making today. So that the director is surely aware through the board meeting, the minutes of this meeting, as well as the board. So if you want the actual information report, she may not have that, but staff would to pull together the report. She will certainly be aware of the request. It goes through the board meeting, and as you know, she's at every board meeting as well. So that's some considerations for you when you're determining how you want to frame your motion.
Okay.
Trustee Promoli, please go ahead.
Okay, so I think that at this point, then we move to have it come back. We trusting that the director is paying attention and of course watching this very closely. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out the wording for this. Okay,
yes,
so
Council Lockyer is going to help you, I think, frame it.
Okay.
Yeah, it says thank you very much, Chair, and through you. Is the motion along the lines of that staff report back to the next curriculum equity and student well-being committee with a report on an update on the status of the library meeting and seating, including an update on the previous trustee motion, ensuring that communication goes back to the delegate regarding the information contained in the report.
Yes, that is beautifully written, Catherine. Thank you.
So trustee Promoli, do you want us to read out the final wording?
Do I read that back? I can't read it in front of me, so.
That's okay. I think you need a seconder at this point.
Okay, so
okay.
I think we are agreed on that.
I would
And
second.
trustee Clark,
Happy to second.
trustee
Because you
Clark,
can't second
okay,
it, I-
seconding. Okay,
Yes.
Are we voting?
so do we have to vote on this? Okay, so we'd like to vote on this. All in favor, please raise your hands so I can see you.
I'm raising
Thank
my hand.
you. Thank you.
I'm in
So
favor.
moved. So the motion has been moved. And thank you, Mr. Allard. Now we go on to our next delegation, and that is by Natasha Lakhani. It's, oh, sorry, 6.2 by Natasha Lakhani, resident, regarding the Peel District School Board's French immersion selection process. I can see Ms. Lakhani is online. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I did want to have a discussion in and around the French immersion process and the lottery system. And so, you know, if you think of it from like a more aggregate level, you know, respectfully, things need to evolve and practices have to be, you know, they need to be looked at, and there has to be change that take place as we evolve as a society, as a community. And I would say, again, respectfully so, I think this is one of those areas where we have an opportunity to improve. And although, you know, what I am speaking about has a significant ask behind it because it's enveloped in the requirement of many resources, I suspect, and there's no expectation that changes can happen overnight. However, I do think an evolution of this program and the lottery system and the way that it's put together and the purpose behind it is no longer valid, and it's a bit antiquated. And I'll go through two different things in my my talk today around why I believe that the lottery system needs to be changed. And then I have some very specific asks that I'd like to position forward. The first is, you know, the rationale for a lottery system in the past may have made sense given the resource constraints and information at the time. However, what I'd like us to consider is that today, as part of a community with a common goal of having the best learning and academically holistic outcomes for our young people, is to agree that our current program selection process inequity does exist. One, because of the access level, and two, because of the actual process, the process that exists in the way that it currently unfolds. You know, although this is partly personal in nature, I have two children currently in the program. And so, yes, this is absolutely based on my experience, but the rationale also is based very much on a data-driven approach and based on research that I've done. I've spoken to many people in the community as well. And so I have taken a very balanced approach in the way that I speak today. And so the way that I kind of describe it on a very, you know, basic level is that I'm talking about this from a very head perspective, so a very pragmatic side, as well as the heart side of things. So the head and the heart, which is, you know, we need to do the right thing here. And ultimately, it's the basis for the impact it has on children today, and specifically siblings in a common household. I'm assuming that everyone has done a review of my documents and the links associated in my documents. And if not, I'll try to kind of integrate that as part of my conversation today. However, you know, again, from a personal side, I've gone through a lot of very stressful months constantly advocating for my child to be part of the French immersion program, where her sibling is currently thriving. I speak the language myself, and in our household, there would have been an automatic inequity that would have existed if my second daughter did not get into the program. Unfortunately, she didn't get into the program and she was waitlisted. And so from there, I've become an advocate for this because my child ended up getting into the program. And I don't think that that matters because there's a ton of other students and children that are impacted by this. And I'll give you a couple scenarios and examples that I've seen transpire and unfold in front of my own eyes. And so when I look at the, two primary reasons for the reason why we need to evolve the lottery system is one, primarily the inequality of access, and two, the two reasons why I'm told that we need a lottery system is because there is a resource constraint. And so, again, based on the research that I've done, there's many districts and areas that have found alternative ways of providing access where inequities don't exist. There was even a very pointed article back in June in the Toronto Star talking about the TDSB's challenges with lottery systems. And the title of the article specifically says, "A game changer for some, divisive for others," inside one of TDSB's most contentious issues of the year, specifically talking about the lottery system and ways that they could improve equity, because they acknowledge that inequity does exist because of the use of lottery systems. So I want to address some of these gaps. First is the equality of access. So as you all are probably aware, the lottery system is creates an environment where students are admitted into a program based on their chance rather than a holistic picture and circumstance of the child. While this may seem fair, a fair way to select students at the aggregate level, it really does not consider the inequality that exists among siblings in a household at the more micro level, where there is an impact of the family. And so the position of equality for all is a flawed disposition given the casting of a wide net, which omits the inequity that is created in the household among siblings and family members and its lasting effect. This disparity in educational opportunity in a bilingual country where every child should be provided the right to education in both languages can have long-term effects on their future academically and ultimately professionally. So here's a couple of examples that again, based on research. A study that was conducted by the US and the National Bureau of Economic Research found that the lottery system in chartered schools can leave a significant difference in academic achievement among siblings. This means that one sibling may perform significantly better than the other simply because of the luck of a lottery. In the same study, it was found that siblings who were not selected for a program experienced a decrease in academic performance and were less likely to attend college. And so you can think about this, there's negative ramifications for such a decision that's made at such a young age in these children's lives. Furthermore, that study found that the emotional toll of the inequality can lead to strained relationships between siblings in a hostile home environment. Another study conducted by the same association found that students who were not selected for the program experienced a decline in self-esteem and motivation to succeed. The study also found long-term effects in inequality can hinder the ability to secure employment and achieve success in their professional lives. This research also showed that inequality among siblings due to the lottery system in schools had a profound impact on their emotional well-being and their academic performance. Siblings who were not selected for the program felt inadequate or inferior to their chosen sibling, leading to feelings of resentment and jealousy. This can strain the relationship between siblings and create a hostile home environment. Additionally, the stress of the perceived competition within the sibling for a spot of the program can be overwhelming and cause significant anxiety. Academically, the impact of inequality can be equally severe. And in the same research, it showed that students who were not selected for the program experienced a decline in both academic performance and self-esteem, which can lead to a cycle of underachievement and lack of motivation in many areas of life. Furthermore, the long-term effect of this inequality can extend beyond academic years into their professional lives, hindering their ability to secure employment or achieve success. There was another research study that I looked at that talked about some of the flaws in the lottery system, which is pertaining to college admissions based on lotteries, and the synopsis and the TLDR on that research again shares the same sentiment and view that the lottery system is not necessarily solving for equality and equity. So again, that's one part of the problem. The second is what I've been told many, many times as I advocated for my child going to the principal, the superintendent, to the French component of the board, was that there's a the supply does not match the demand. And while I can appreciate that there are a limited number of spots in the Peel program, I believe that it is our duty in our planning process to ensure that there is adequate supply of teachers to the demand that's needed. You know, systemically and systematically, we may be potentially flawed in the way that we look at our numbers. And, you know, we just went through a reorg process looking at the supply and demand of students and the number of kids in classes. I think this is flawed as well, because one of the big things that happened within, specifically in Brampton, I can't speak to other areas, that's the area that I live in, but there's a ton of data that shows that there are multiple families dwelling in the same household. And so that's specifically talking about families who rent out basements. And so the numbers that we're going off of to calculate the supply and demand paradigm is flawed to begin with. So there's always going to be a supply and demand issue because we're not potentially addressing all of these additional people. And again, in my document, it shows the data that kind of balances out and talks about this. And then on the flip side, the resource of teachers, this program just needs to evolve and be better at our planning in order to have an adequate supply of teachers to meet these demands. And, you know, I humbly say this.
Mr. Kani, can I interrupt? You have only 10 minutes, you're all past the time. Are you almost at the end of your presentation?
Yeah, I have about 2 minutes. So, you know, although I lack the knowledge and the access to the data, the one thing that I'll say is that, you know, there's examples of twins being split up, parents having to make decisions of putting one kid in the program and one twin not, or siblings at the age of 5, you know, having to be differentiated from their siblings at that young age. And so just in conclusion, you know, the one thing I would say is that there's 3 actions that I ask of. One is fix the supply issues of teachers, so all that want to be part of this program can be part of the program. 2, if we can't do that in the short or medium term, fix the lottery system to be able to automatically allow siblings in first. And 3, if that's not possible, and again, this is based on research, provide multiple entries for siblings in the lottery so they have a more favorable chance. But ultimately, let siblings in so there isn't that inequity in the home, and fix the supply issue that does currently exist, and acknowledge that this is a problem, and let's work together on fixing it.
Thank you very much. And are there any questions by the trustees at this time? Yes, Trustee Bailey, please go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation, through the chair. Through you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. You obviously took a lot of time into this, and I can see that it's something that you're very passionate about. And as I tell every parent, that they are their child's biggest advocate, so I commend you on that. Can you clarify for me in your presentation, are you saying that if a parent, just because you don't have any siblings, you shouldn't have the same right as somebody that has as a sibling? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that if there's so for example, my eldest daughter is in the program. My second daughter, you know, I applied to be in the program. She did not get in. She was waitlisted. She eventually ended up getting in because I guess 5 families decided to opt out. So she got in, but there was a very high chance that she wouldn't have gotten in, which creates an inequity in my home. My one daughter gets access to the program, the immersion program, but my other daughter does not. And so that inequity in the home is based off of everything I just said and all that research that I just shared, that there are significant consequences that could happen in my home: resentment between siblings, self-esteem issues, negative academic problems that happen. All of that is in the research that's been done that talks about why it's so imperative to have equality in the household at the micro level, rather than just looking at this at the macro level. That, you know, and I get what you're alluding to, which is, you know, anyone, it doesn't matter if you have a sibling or not, everyone should have the same access. I'm not disagreeing with that. Ultimately, I think anyone that wants access to the program should have access. However, what I've been told is that we have a limited number of spots. And so if that's the ecosystem in which we have to work in and operate in, which one I don't agree with, if that's the ecosystem that we have to operate in, then what I'm saying is consider the impact that it has on siblings. Think of the scenario that I've just described, and it's not mine, that there are 2 twins, 2 sisters, 2 brothers, a brother and a sister. One child gets in, and one child does not get into the program. The parents either have to say, too bad, so sad, neither of you are going because I want you guys to have equality in the home, or one child gets into the program and the other child doesn't. There is complete inequity there.
Thank you, Mr. Trustee Bailey, any more questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bailey. What about our other trustees? Are there any more questions? Yes, Trustee Clark, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you through you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Lakhani, for taking the time. You know, it's obvious that this is a very, very important issue for you. So just for clarity, you're suggesting that when one child in the family is chosen, that the other is selected for this opportunity, that the other students in the family that optimally would also be chosen. Is that correct?
So if let me clarify. If we're talking like optically and like ideally, anyone that requests access should have access. That's ultimately the goal. If not, what I am suggesting is that if a sibling is already in the program and the parent wants the second sibling or third or fourth sibling in the program, yes, I think that they should have access to the program, because we're talking about the equality in the home.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. One more question, just a short one.
Go ahead.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead,
Through you, Chair. You mentioned documents that you had. Have you supplied that to us?
I've shared that for the deadlines.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That's all.
Do we have any more questions from the trustees? Trustee Alves?
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Anaya. Thank you so much for providing your delegation. I'm really glad to hear you today. So I just wanted to clarify.
It's Natasha, and I is my daughter. Sorry, I'm logged in as her.
Natasha, I apologize. I was reading your name from your screen. I apologize.
All good. It's okay.
So thank you very much for delegating today. So one question I had to ask. So I think I understand your point. You were saying, you know, I think the point you were making was about equity in the home, and you know, if one child was in, you're saying that, you know, siblings should have that kind of, for lack of a better word, that preferential treatment. Are you also advocating for the inverse, where if one gets in and there are siblings that none get in, or only that anyone with siblings would have that preferential treatment?
Yeah, look, I mean, ultimately, like, I'll go back. I think anyone that requests access should get it. But if not, I think there's work that we need to do. And I personally may not have all the answers, and I may not have contemplated all of the various scenarios that exist. But what I am saying today is that I've seen many, many scenarios in the community, and I'm representing many, many parents here that are having, you know, a very difficult time choosing between what they want to provide their kids in a public school system, right? And if we've already decided at one point, one child, one sibling, one older sibling has gotten into the program, there's some logic behind the idea or the concept that let them all be in the program. So there is equity in the home. Let them all thrive together. Let them all be able to have access to it. That ecosystem, that home and family life, that is so fragile as it is from a mental health standpoint, from an academic standpoint, let there be equality and equity in that environment.
Thank you, Natasha. Again, I totally understood that point. I just wanted to clarify. Would you also be suggesting the inverse? So in the event where siblings are offered that preferential treatment, imagine there are families with 5 or 6 siblings. Would then those that only have 2 or 3, sorry, I'm just trying to understand the delegation so that when we send this to our, you know, should we send this to our director for an answer, we have a clear kind of understanding of both ways of which this flows. Would you also be advocating that in the event where only one of 2 siblings should be allotted a spot, that none be allotted a spot? If it had to be equal to both ways.
Well, I think that it should be if one is offered, both are offered. I don't think you should be taking away spots because one didn't get in. But also, I just want to be like, it's semantics, and like language is very important when we're trying to articulate something that's going to someone else who hasn't heard this. Is that I'm not asking for preferential treatment, like in the inverse of preferential treatment. I think that's leading language, and I think we should be a lot more neutral in our language when we're talking about something like this. And again, I'll go back and say this. I may not have all the answers, but what I am asking is for a discussion on what is the best approach to evolve this program to address some of the inequities in the home at the micro level that does exist, and research shows that it does have a negative impact on children and households.
Thank you very much. Again, didn't mean to use leading language, just wanted to really have a clear picture of the full scope, but I don't have any more questions, and just wanted to thank you again for coming in today. Thank you very much.
Nope, no problem.
Thank you, Trustee Alves. I think Trustee Cameron has something to say or a question.
Yes, thank you.
Please go ahead, Trustee Cameron.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I've been doing this for 13 years, and every year it's a struggle. Every year it's we have so many more students in our board who want to enter grade 1 French immersion, and so few opportunities. I would admit that I don't know the answer to this. I have made lots of recommendations over the years. Started at a later year, go down to 40%, 35% of the day in French, spread those French teachers around further. I can't seem to find a suggestion that would work. I do think that given the size of this board, there are practical realities. And what we might be talking about here is what is ideal and versus what is possibly real. So if I understand from your presentation, correct me if I'm wrong, here's the question. You're asking the board or this committee to do 3 things. One is to fix the supply issue of French immersion teachers. 1. Number 2 is to fix the lottery system. And number 3 is to provide multiple entry points to the French immersion program. Would that be right? Do I have that right?
Those are 3 recommendations that, like, again, based on the research I've done that I've seen happen in other areas that do have lottery systems that aren't working, that they have fixed. These are all the suggestions. The first 2 are definitely 2 that I think are, number 1 is absolutely correct. Number 2, I would again say is very correct. Number 3, again, is just a suggestion based on the research that I've done. So, yes to all 3. However, I'll go back and say this, and I know I may sound like a broken record. I may not have all the answers, but I'm more than willing to work with whomever, if that is a possibility, to help troubleshoot and figure this one out. And it's, again, like I said, it's both the head and the heart here. My kid got into the program, so I should be okay with this. I should be like, too bad, so sad, everyone else, right? But I'm not.
Okay, thank you. So through you, Chair, I'd like to present a motion based on what I believe we have heard today. And the motion would be that this presentation be referred to this committee's administration for a response.
Thank you, Trustee Cameron. Is that okay, Councillor Lockyer? Okay. So Trustee Cameron, would you like to put a motion on the floor?
Yes, please.
To refer this presentation to the committee for action, further action?
The committee's
This report.
administration, yes.
So
For response to the report, yes. I
do
would
we have a
move that.
seconder?
Yep, I'd be happy to second.
Trustee Alves is seconding. Sorry, Ms. Lockyer.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, are you asking for a report from, to come back to this committee on this issue, or are you requesting a response from the director's office to the delegate?
So the motion was that this presentation be referred to the committee's administration for a response, and I'll add back to this committee.
Thank you. That's a report. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cameron. So we have a motion put forward by Trustee Cameron and seconded by Trustee Alves. Thank you, Natasha. I think that brings us to the end of the second presentation of the delegation. So
Yeah,
we go
that's
on to
great.
the next.
sorry, so how does that loop me back in terms of understanding what the next steps are and how this goes? Because I understand that there's a motion to respond back to this committee, but then how do I get in advised of any movement on this or what happens next?
So trustee, so the Council Lockyer, you want to respond to that?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The report will come back to a future committee meeting and we can notify you when it's back on the agenda.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Point of order.
Trustee Cameron? Trustee
Point of
Cameron,
order.
yes.
Thank you. I don't think we voted on the motion. We had a motion and we had it seconded, but I didn't hear a call for a vote.
Okay. So let's vote on it. So all in favor? Thank you. Moved.
Thank you.
Yep.
So that brings us to the end of the second delegation presentation. We go on to item 6.3 on the agenda, and that is delegation by Pam Schwartzberg and Jen Stevens on learning for a sustainable future. Are you here, Pam? Yes, I see you here.
Yes.
Regarding call to action regarding declaration of climate emergency and climate change education. So you can go ahead and make your presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm Pam Schwartzberg, the president and CEO of LSF. With me tonight is Jen Stevens, manager of programs and research. Next slide, please. So Learning for a Sustainable Future is a national charity founded in 1991. Our focus is education for sustainable development in the K-12 school systems across the country. We focus on 4 strategic priorities: policies supporting teachers, empowering youth, and focusing on bright spots of innovation. We use the Sustainable Development Goals as a lens through which to look at all of our programs. Next slide. We undertook a survey in 2022. It was a follow-up to one done in 2019, looking at Canadians' perspectives on climate change and education. We looked at Canadians' knowledge, understanding, perceptions of climate change and its risks, and really drilled down on climate change education. There were 4 participant groups: general public, parents, students, and educators. The data was collected by Leger on their online survey panel. We surveyed over 4,000 Canadians. You can see the breakdown at the bottom of Ontario respondent groups, national and by province. Next slide, please. So all of the reports, the Ontario summary, the national report, infographics, we did knowledge mobilization sessions across the country, including Ontario. They're all on the LSF website. Next slide, please. So just some of the high-level findings. Canadians, great majority, are certain climate change is happening. They're concerned. They feel we're experiencing a climate emergency. We fail to care for the planet. Climate change poses risks, and they're concerned about the impacts. And I would suggest if we were to do this survey again after this summer of wildfires and droughts and etc., heat waves, these numbers have probably increased. Next slide, please. I'll pass it to Jen.
Thanks, Pam, and thanks for having us here. One of the key positive takeaways from this survey is the fact that since 2019, Canadians and Ontarians' overall knowledge of climate change has improved, with 66% of Ontarians passing the 10-question knowledge quiz in 2022 compared to just 54% in 2019. And although this signifies movement in the right direction, we can see that there is still work to be done to educate the Canadian public, with 1/3 of participants still not able to get a passing grade. One key misconception that was brought to light during this knowledge quiz is that the thinning of the ozone layer is a primary cause of climate change. With growing knowledge, next slide please, and understanding also comes worry and uncertainty. 50% of the population believes that climate change is causing mental health issues or making them worse, and 1/4 of Canadians reported that their worries are affecting their daily lives. The top 3 emotions that come to mind when thinking about climate change are feelings of anxiety, frustration, and fear. And concerningly, students were likelier than any other respondent group to report feeling anxious or frightened. Next slide. So on that note, I'd like to turn a page and focus on the actions that Canadians are taking to reduce climate change in their daily lives. 72% of Canadians said that they would change some or a lot in their life to reduce the effects of climate change. And when we take a closer look at the differences in population group with regard to how much they're willing to change, educators were even more willing to change their lives than the national average. As we know and understand from existing data, individual actions can really only take us so far. Larger scale change is needed, and 78% of Ontarians agree that while personal actions are important, systemic change is needed to address climate change. Strikingly, only 17% of the national population and 18% in Ontario feel that the government is doing a good job in its actions to address climate change. So this shows us that there is vast room for improvement and escalation when it comes to public trust and the potential for large-scale change. Next slide. UNESCO has repeatedly reported that education is a vital factor in the mitigation of climate change. And the good news is that Canadians think climate change education should be a high priority. The overall number of Canadians who feel this way is increasing from 59% in 2019 to 67% in 2022. Most Canadians also believe that the education should be doing a lot more to educate young people about climate change, and that climate change education should be the role of all teachers. One of the new questions in this survey in 2022 compared to 2019 asked about teaching climate change as early as kindergarten, and most agree that climate change topics should be taught in all grades K through 12, including green energy, extreme weather, and biodiversity, and overconsumption starting in K through 3. Next slide. The traditional thinking that climate change education is meant to mainly teach about the science of a warming planet has broadened to include more diverse topics. Most believe that climate change education should aim to change the way people behave. These results are important because an active and solutions-based approach to teaching climate change helps to counterbalance the doom and gloom of the topic. The science of climate change remains highly important, as it should be, but there is high support from our respondents for other topics such as inequality, social justice issues, and teaching Indigenous knowledge. Many understand the importance of teachers addressing climate anxiety, especially when we look back at the findings that we shared a few slides ago that students are feeling more frightened and anxious than other groups. Next slide. Student voices are not included often enough in the decision-making that directly affects them. So here we show some of the student responses to an open-ended question that asked, if you could decide what you would learn in school about climate change, what would you tell your teacher? And these were the top 5 answers. Offering solutions to the problem was number 1 from youth. They did want to also be taught about the scientific evidence, but they wanted to feel empowered, learn about the consequences, and they feel they need to get more climate change education overall. Next slide, please. This next slide is looking at the results that were obtained from a supplementary part of the survey that was only given to educators. So if you look at the pie chart, you will see that 35% of teachers indicated that they did not cover climate change. This is an improvement from 2019 when 57% stated that they don't teach this topic. However, we still have quite a ways to go, as only 13% of teachers teach more than 10 hours of climate change over an entire school year or term. Recall from a previous slide that between 50 and 70% of Canadians felt that all the topics listed in this table were important to teach. So it's interesting to compare what is actually happening in Canadian classrooms. Overall, many educators across all regions are not teaching about the economic and political aspects, inequality and social justice issues, and Indigenous knowledge as it relates to climate change. Very few also seem to be teaching the social emotional learning strategies that are needed to help students cope with negative emotions. So perhaps the next slide will shed some light on why teachers are struggling. The results from this survey found that only 1/3 of educators feel that they have the knowledge and skills that are needed to teach climate change. And it was disappointing that this low percentage has not changed since 2019. What did change was that more teachers state that they need professional development to learn how to effectively teach this complex topic. What also grew was the percentage of educators who felt that they could not find the time within their course or grade to teach climate change. So specifically, what do educators need? They need more resources, an updated curriculum, and opportunities to learn about instructional strategies and how to extend classroom learning outdoors. Over 1/3 also felt they need a school-wide culture that promotes climate change education so they are not navigating this all on their own. Next slide, please. So we're ending the results section of our presentation with the important topic of taking action. The terms eco-anxiety and eco-grief are becoming known as emerging mental health conditions in young people, and studies have found that encouraging students to feel empowered and take action is essential when teaching climate change. While 51% of educators are encouraging students to take action, this does need to be a bigger priority, and it's not surprising to see that some of the more controversial types of action are not being encouraged in classrooms, including engaging in political action and peaceful dissent. Over to you, Pam.
Thank you, Pam and Jen, for this very, I hope you've reached the end of your presentation.
Sorry, we've got a couple more slides, just the call to action.
Okay. You have passed your 10-minute limit, but we'll give you a minute.
Thank you so much. Okay. So what needs to be done? Ontario's overwhelmingly say it's time to incorporate climate change across all grades, all subjects, K to 12. Teachers need to be better equipped with knowledge, resources, and PD. Students need more opportunity to learn about and take action, reducing eco-anxiety and fostering feelings of hope and well-being. And connections need to be made between climate change and equity, diversity, and inclusion in schools and globally. Next slide. So what we're asking tonight is for Peel District School Board to declare a climate emergency. Peel Region, Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon are among municipalities that have done so. Peel schools need to align with these community commitments. There's a number of boards in Ontario that have declared climate emergencies. Peel students need a voice, and trustees can make a difference. And we really encourage you tonight to declare a climate emergency and a bold action plan for implementation. I think that's the key. Next slide, please.
And so this, we just wanted to cover some of the things that LSF is able to offer to support this initiative, including a huge resource database that's reviewed for teachers by teachers, as well as emails on hot topics, step outside, how to get into nature. We have professional development opportunities for teachers that cover these exact topics and sustainable development goals, conferences to support youth, to take on action and give them grants, including action project grants for classrooms up to $500. We have a whole school initiative that focuses on the sustainable development goals that we encourage schools to come on board with and get resources, and other resources that specifically focus on climate change, an inquiry guide that takes transformative learning and student-centered learning, as well as a green job video series. And maybe we'll end here, Pam.
I think that's fine. I think we're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pam and Jen, this was a very good presentation, especially since the past summer. We have seen all those wildfires and the hurricanes and the, the floods in different parts of the world where it was most unexpected. And this is a topic on everybody's mind. Thank you for your presentation. So I would like our trustees, if you have any questions, please go ahead. Trustee Promoli, do you have your hand up? Trustee Cameron?
I do, yes, thank you.
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Pam, for this excellent very detailed and excellent presentation. A very current topic as well at about 82 degrees in my house today on October 3rd. I'm really curious. I was really curious to, as I was reading the report in advance of the meeting, and wondering if your results would have data from perspective of young people, showing what students would actually want when it comes to climate education. And I saw that. Thank you. You have that deal laid out nicely for us to read in slide 11, which is titled "From the Viewpoint of Students." But two questions that I do have that I didn't completely see, and perhaps it's there, but I may not have caught it, is how can the inclusion of climate change into our curriculum help to support student equity and well-being? Student equity and well-being, how are they enhanced if we were to include climate change into our curriculum? Through you, Chair.
Mr. Cameron, do you want to put a motion on the floor to move to refer this presentation to the Director of Education to follow up with the delegation? Or do you want to refer it to another committee for action?
Sorry, Chair, I had a question.
Oh, you had a question?
Yeah.
And who was it addressed to?
Is it not coming through clearly? I just went through my question. I thought I was being heard.
I got it on my end. I got it on my end, Trustee Cameron.
Okay.
I think there might have just been some confusion there. Sorry to interject, Chair. My apologies.
Yes, please go ahead, Trustee Cameron, if you have a question.
Okay, so the question is, how can the inclusion of climate change into our curriculum in our board help to support student equity and well-being?
Are we able to respond? Okay.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I'll start, Pam, and feel free to jump in. As we saw through the results that we shared, students are the most anxious and frightened about this topic from any of the other respondent groups. So the best way to help students is to give them agency, not just teach students about the science, but how to take action and how to make a difference. And we know from a plethora of research that the opposite of hopelessness is action, and this helps people to feel more empowered. So by encouraging students to take action and incorporate it directly into the curriculum, this can help combat this. As well, directly related to climate change education is also outdoor learning and falling in love with nature. And this has so many proven benefits for mental and for physical health. In terms of equity, we are also well aware that the effects of climate change impact marginalized communities the most. So it inherently is an equity issue. And the curriculum would need input from marginalized communities, especially Indigenous communities, in order to effectively incorporate their thoughts into curriculum. As well, the type of teaching that is most appropriate for climate change is project-based and transformational teaching that puts students at the center of their learning. And this type of learning is inclusive for students who don't necessarily learn best in standardized school settings. So it can be really inclusive for all types of learners. And our results support these as well. 48% of the population believes that the connection between climate change and racial equity, gender equity, and social justice issues should be addressed in classrooms. And 52% of people feel that Indigenous knowledge, in addition to Western science, should be included in climate change learning in the classroom. Yeah, did you want to add anything?
No, you did great. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
One more question, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead, Trustee Cameron.
Thank you. So I would thank you for that answer, Jen. That was very good, very helpful. Those are two obviously very big and important areas. How we can support student equity and student well-being in our board is critically important. I was impressed with your survey data from 4,035 participants. If that recent survey data was taken into consideration when developing a board-wide climate change education policy and implementation plan, what would be included in that? What would we be doing different than we're not doing now?
I'll take that one, I think. So I think it was clear from what parents and teachers and students were asking in the survey data that they're looking for whole system approach, systemic approach to this, top down, bottom up. They're looking for engagement action. Students want agency. They want to be able to act. They want to understand and learn, but they want real world opportunities. The support, the leadership in the school. Half of the teacher respondents said they don't want to be the only teacher with the environmental portfolio, if you will. It has to be across all subjects, all grades. Teachers need PD, they need resources. So really it's calling for a strategy, across the board strategy, similar to what you've done with your equity strategy, that looks at leadership, looks at student achievement, student engagement, mental health issues, engaging community in real world problem-solving issues. Jenna, did you want to add anything?
That's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen, and
thank you.
Trustee Cameron. Do you have any more questions?
No, but I'd like to put a motion, 2 motions on the floor, if that's possible. If no other questions are I see Trustee Davies has his hand up. I'm sorry.
Trustee Davies, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Just in light of recent events at the Peelschools School Board, when you did your research, did you hear from any parents who felt that this may be political and thus did not want it in the school system? Because I've just drawn a little correlation between, you said that the children seem to be anxious or nervous about it, and that could be between a conflict from the message coming from home and the message coming from the school, or vice versa.
I don't have the data in front of me, but we were actually quite surprised at how little concern was raised. Because one of the questions was for teachers, would you not do this? I forget the exact wording, because of parental pushback or pushback from administrators. And there was very little, even in Alberta, which we were surprised about, but certainly in Ontario, very, very low numbers responding that was an issue.
Just pulled it up, Pam. Only 17% of teachers felt that lack of support from parents would be an issue. So we did anticipate that data and those results being higher. However, the results did not reflect what we anticipated and what you're asking.
But were any parents consulted? Is sort of what we just had a situation last week where perhaps certain parents weren't consulted. That's all.
So, Jen, do you have the number of parents surveyed on that?
Yeah, so parents were consulted about all of the questions on the survey, and are specifically from across Canada, we had, sorry, I'm just pulling up the numbers here, 1,373 parents. So I would direct you to our full report, and I can cite some specific stats, but absolutely we asked for parents' opinions on their support for the inclusion of climate change, which topics to be included, and this varied by province for sure. But overall, the support was quite high on many of the topics that we covered in this presentation, and we can pull out some specific stats from parents if that's something of interest to you for future.
No, I just wanted to ensure that it was done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Davies. Any other questions from our trustees? Thank you. Seeing none, So trustee Cameron, do you want to put your motion on the floor?
Yes, please. Thank you. The first motion I'd like to present is the motion that this committee support a call for the Peel District School Board to declare a climate emergency.
And yes, Councillor Lockyer.
Thank you very much, and through you, Madam Chair. Motions coming from the delegations are restricted to the four opportunities about what to do with the motion, not to deal with the content of the motion. So that would be an appropriate motion. Trustee Cameron, if you were to move a motion to have a report back, then that motion would follow from that report.
Okay, thank you. I anticipated that, which is what my second motion is, which is to have this committee refer this report to the director for a response back to this committee.
I think that is appropriate. Yes, thank you, Trustee Cameron. Do you have a seconder for your motion?
Trustee Promoli.
Trustee Promoli is the seconder.
And
can we put it to the vote?
I'm voting
All
in
those in
favor.
favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Motion has been passed.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you to our delegates. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Could
It's
I
quite
just
research.
Sorry,
Yeah, please go ahead.
could we be notified when it comes back to the committee, please?
Yes, you will be notified.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
So that brings us to the end of agenda number 6. We go on to the next item, which is staff reports. Item 7.1 is the PDSB Mental Health Strategy 2023-24 for information by AD Paul De Silva, but I see AD Paul De Silva is not here, so it's Superintendent Scucato. Are you going to?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair, I'd like to ask Executive Officer of Social Emotional Learning, Janet Chakowski, to please share the report.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'm Janet Chakowski, Acting Senior Manager of Social Emotional Learning, and I'll provide a brief overview of the Mental Health Strategy and Year 1 Action Plan. With the guidance of School Mental Health Ontario and the Peel District School Board Core Mental Health Leadership Team, a new mental health strategy and action plan has been developed and launched this fall. This strategy was developed with input from the 4 advisory groups, including students, staff, parents and caregivers, and community and faith leaders, as well as the steering committee over the 2022 to 2023 school year. After the strategy priorities were written, the core leadership team started to gather input on what the advisory group saw as action steps that could be put in place to begin to work toward the achievement of the mental health strategy priorities. The first priority is based in creating a sense of belonging in each classroom and school environment. Together with our partners in the Curriculum Equity and Modern Learning departments, we have created resources and learning opportunities to assist the school and class staff in creating and nurturing identity-affirming and welcoming environments. Included in these learning experiences is the opportunity to gain knowledge and understanding of trauma, including racial trauma, and its impact on well-being. The second priority addresses mental health literacy and promotion. This priority is supported by PPM 169 Student Mental Health and the ministry's mandate to include mental health literacy in everyday school experiences. We are working diligently with our partners in curriculum to ensure a fulsome and meaningful implementation of this PPM and our strategy priority. In addition, we use summer ministry funding for mental health to have a team curate K-21 resources to support the integration of mental health literacy and promotion in all classes and all schools. Although the ministry has mandated the inclusion of mental health literacy in grades 7 and 8 this year, the Peel District School Board has gone further and encouraged schools to begin to integrate the ideas of mental health literacy and promotion into all classes beginning this year and to continue to deepen this learning over the next 3 years. The final priority explicitly raises the impact of systems of oppression on mental health and well-being. For this priority, we continue to partner with our equity, curriculum, and modern learning departments to produce learning opportunities and resources to support learning about how oppressive practices in our system and society impact students and families. We will continue to monitor this developing understanding through the school equity audit tool, report backs from schools, input from community partners, students, and parents and caregivers. The Year 1 action plan is currently under development and includes the integration of the strategy priorities into our school improvement and equity planning process and our commitment to meeting the requirements of PPF 169. We also continuously re-examine our existing policies, procedures, and guidelines to integrate anti-oppressive practices. We also continue to work on fostering community partnerships and removing barriers to care. Challenges persist with community waitlists and availability of identity-affirming healthcare. However, as we are invited to sit on more community advisory committees, we continue to advocate for the students and families of PIA. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Yeah. So this report is for receipt, and we need to put it on the floor. So can I ask Trustee Jeffrey Clark to put the report on the floor?
Yes.
And Trustee Promoli, you seconded. Thank you. So do we have any questions from our trustees? Any hands around? So seeing that there are no questions, all in favor of the report, please, yeah, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Trustee Bailey. Okay, before we pass the, we vote on the report, let's give Trustee Bailey the mic. Go ahead.
Through you, Chair, I have a question for Chairman. No, Catherine. After this will go straight to the board.
This is information.
The strategy, this presentation goes to the board through the minutes.
Okay.
It's for receipt.
This is just for receipt.
That's correct.
Please, any questions from our trustees?
One for me, actually, Chair, whenever you're ready.
Please go ahead, Trustee Isles.
Thank you, Chairwoman. A question I have, so I see here on the first appendices, there are three call outs, if you will. I'm going to briefly read them. Call out number 1, we will create identity affirming, welcoming school and classroom environments where all participants are represented and meaningfully / intentionally included. We will have an understanding of traumatic intergenerational history, as well as the proactive factors that support people in the present. Call out number 2 quickly reads, mental health literacy and promotion will be part of everyday classroom and school environments and experiences. This involves the ability to understand the continuum of well-being, including mental health distress, and provide connections and pathways to timely and appropriate, culturally representative and responsive supports. And then the third reads, we will build system capacity to understand that racism, ableism, homo/transphobia, classism, and other forms of discrimination impact the mental health and well-being of students, families, and staff. Mental health is supported when people experience healthy relationships with self and others, freedom from discrimination and violence, support from the community, and agency to reach their potential and purpose in life. I'm hoping the administration can please clarify, in this strategy, what additional tangible supports will students get to bolster any distress they're experiencing with, mental health or mental anguish? Is the administration proposing, I'm wondering if there are any operational changes that students can take advantage of? More time with counselors, extra time to finish exams. Are there any tangible operational impacts that the report doesn't outline in the high-level overview of the strategy?
Through you, Chair, this represents our board's priorities over the next 3 years. So each year we have an action plan that talks about implementation and accountability measures. that are completed every year in collaboration with our friends in equity, SEEP, and curricula. So mental health supports are and always will be available directly to students. We're funded through the ministry directly for mental health supports. And those supports are available within schools, the school-based professional services student personnel, and including social workers, psychologists, and speech language pathologists, and the mental health resource team through the Be Well support line. And we continue to work with our community partners to increase and streamline supports and pathways to care. And we continue to advocate for specialized identity affirming counseling and healthcare services within the community.
Trustee Alves, do you have any more questions?
I think that answered my question. So I think I'm understanding. So okay, I don't think I have any more questions. I'll leave them there. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And any more questions from our trustees? Seeing none. So this report is for receipt. It has been moved and seconded. So I would request our trustees to vote on it. All in favor?
Aye.
Moved. It's been carried. So we go on to the next item on our agenda. That's item 7.2, which is the Summer Learning Program Summary presented by AD Camille Logan.
Through you, Chair Benjamin, I will now turn it over to Superintendent Hugh Hoppy, Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, who will prepare to deliver the report.
So before we go on to Trustee Superintendent Hoppy, Trustee Alex, can you put this on the floor?
I would be happy to.
And we would like Trustee Clark to second it. Thank you. Superintendent Hoppy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This report provides an overview of the summer learning programs that take place across the Peel District School Board during the months of July and August. These programs have served thousands of students and demonstrate the wide range of learning opportunities available to advance the learning outcomes for Peel District School Board students. Each summer, the Peel District School Board offers a wide range of learning opportunities during the months of July and August. The learning opportunities range from summer school classes to day school camps and experiential programs. Summer learning opportunities provide great avenues for students to earn credits and gain new knowledge that helps to develop transferable skills which build the necessary foundation for post-secondary pathways. To ensure equity of access to our students, we offer 22 programs at over 35 elementary and secondary schools across the district. Additionally, we are proud of the strong partnerships formed with many post-secondary institutions at the college and university levels. For example, University of Toronto, Mississauga, the Sauk School of Engineering at York University, Centennial, Seneca, Sheridan, and Humber colleges. These unique learning experiences, which can include credit-bearing programs, are designed to strengthen the foundational skills for post-secondary education while learning on campus and interacting with university or college students, faculty, and staff. I will be highlighting some of the success over the 20 programs offered to over 16,000 students ranging from K to 12 and up to and including adult learners during the months of July and August. Next slide. A total of 4,312 students enrolled in our literacy and numeracy and leadership development programs. These programs were offered to students from K to 12 and our adult learners. And given that trustees have already received the package, I'm not going to go through all the particulars. Next slide. On this slide, you can see that these programs represent our traditional offering of summer school as well as the new opportunities that we have sought to provide greater pathways to success for our secondary students. Next slide. We are very excited and proud of these programs as the 371 students represent success in new opportunities in which we have partnered as a board to help our students find success and be compensated accordingly. They develop the skills necessary for their education and also gain valuable life experience in the world of work. Next slide. Recognizing that we have many students who have special education needs who wish to access our summer programs, including summer school, funding was provided to schools to support transitions back to school after summer or to a new class or school, as well as providing funding to hire continuing education summer monitor teachers who support students with special education needs during summer school courses. Next slide. Here, you can see the total student enrollment in our credit accumulation and post-secondary partnerships, which I've already highlighted. You'll also note the success that our students have been able to experience in a variety of learning environments, including these partnerships. Now, what I would like to share is a brief video highlighting the success of one of our programs, the Secondary Transition and Readiness, aka STAR program at Harold Brathwaite Secondary School.
No video in the PDF.
And so you will not be able to see the video. But what I will share with you is that in this video, what you would have seen is this wonderful program at Harold Brathwaite in which the students were fully engaged in an opportunity for them to be able to transition into the secondary experience and be able to see what it's like firsthand, learning within the environment that they were then going to be able to fully engage in once September started. And you would see a number of caring adults in the building. You would see a number of students engaged in a variety of different learning activities. Once again, creating strong partnerships with new peers, as well as being able to become familiar with an environment that oftentimes can be daunting, but is one in which was now becoming familiar, so that way they would find confidence and be able to navigate the hallways with success, and also be able to establish new rapport and relationships with others to build on the opportunities that have been provided. So in summary, the Peel District School Board has a variety of summer programs that provide wonderful opportunities for success for our students. Going forward, we aim to improve access and promote additional partnerships that will ensure improved achievement, experiences, and opportunities for students to secure the necessary foundational skills and the roadmap for their elementary, secondary, and post-secondary pathways. That concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Hoppy. And we have trustees. Do the trustees have any questions? I see Trustee Bailey has a hand up. Please go ahead, Trustee Bailey.
Through you, Chair. These summer programs are so valuable to our students. I cannot say enough about them. And the fact that, you know, not gonna lie, I've taken advantage of them way back in the days. There weren't as many, and they weren't as good as what's there now. But I must say, our board is doing some really awesome things when it comes to summer learning. Kudos to them.
Thank you.
Trustee Promoli, you have something to say? Any other questions from our trustees? I too would agree with Trustee Bailey. I've gone around to some of the schools in summer and I've seen how the kids really are fully engaged and they get valuable, you would say, experiences with the different programs that the PDSB provides. Thank you for this and hope that you'll have many more, wonderful programs for the students in the future. Thank you so much. This report is for receipt. It has been moved and seconded, and can we have a vote on it? Trustees, all in favor, put your hands up, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. It has been moved and carried. We come to number 8 on our agenda, that's communications. Do we have any communications for our trustees for this committee? Seeing none, I go to item 9 on the agenda, trustee motions for considerations. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 10, trustee notices of motion. Do we have any notices of motion from our trustee? Seeing none, I go on to number 11, and can I have one of the trustees?
I move.
Motion to adjourn. Trustee Cameron has moved to adjourn, and Trustee Lucas Alves has seconded the motion. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank
Here,
you.
here.
Have a great evening, everybody, and thank you for all the presentations.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.